They told you imagination was child's play. And what if I tell you it is the very creative force of God moving through your mind, shaping reality itself in ways you cannot yet comprehend, but are destined to discover? This is how it begins, with the daring thought that the unseen images within you are not fantasy but the blueprint of tomorrow, waiting for your belief to breathe them into existence. This is where the illusion shatters, for I will reveal that Neville Goddard taught imagination is not a weak substitute for action, but the root from which all action, wealth, and circumstances sprout. This is why it matters, because when you stop treating imagination as a toy and start honoring it as law, money ceases to be random and becomes obedient to your inner command. This is the first unveiling, showing that every dollar, every check, every sum that has ever entered your life was first born in the shadowlands of your imagination before it wore flesh in your bank account. This is how the curtain lifts, for Neville declared that imagining creates reality, and those who dare to accept it find themselves rewriting the very stage on which their life unfolds. This is the turning point, where you no longer see the world as cause, but as effect, and the only true cause rests in the imaginal acts you dare to sustain. This is how freedom announces itself, because once you realize that wealth is not given by luck, labor, or chance, but by inner vision, you are free from the tyranny of appearances. This is the moment of redefinition, when money stops being a master that controls you and becomes a servant that obeys your imaginal decree. This is where the old chains dissolve, because the world cannot hold power over one who knows that imagination is God in action. This is the unveiling of authority, teaching that what you dare to assume inwardly with feeling hardens into fact with absolute certainty. This is the spark of realization, for Neville insisted that every man is God imagining, clothed in limitation only until he remembers his creative birthright. This is how destiny is rewritten, as the inner eye paints the exact figure you choose, and life bends to deliver it with precision. This is the new law unveiled, where imagination is not optional, but essential, not decorative, but determinative. This is why circumstances lose power, because when the inner scene dominates, the outer world must bow in obedience. This is how the inner temple rises, as you step into the sacred chamber of your own mind and find the treasury waiting. This is the heartbeat of the teaching, for Neville would say, imagine lovingly, persistently, and the world reshapes itself accordingly. This is where the illusion deepens, because the mind argues it cannot be so, yet the testimonies echo across time to confirm it. This is the ultimate revelation of this section, that the money you seek is already yours in imagination, and the only task is to assume its reality until it breathes into the visible world. Can you imagine holding a vision so clear that the universe cannot mistake what you ask for? A vision where every detail of the sum you desire is etched into the fabric of your imagination like an unshakable decree. This is how it unfolds, because Neville taught that vagueness produces vague outcomes, but clarity sharpens the channel through which reality flows. This is where the illusion deepens, for most people merely hope for more money, and in doing so, they invite trickles of randomness rather than rivers of precision. This is why it matters, because when you declare, "I have received $10,000, you bind the invisible with a shape it cannot deny. This is the moment of awakening, as you realize that the mind cannot deliver what the heart has not specified. This is how certainty is born, by speaking the number, visualizing the amount, and sealing it with emotion until it becomes alive. This is the turning point, because you cease being a beggar asking for scraps and become a creator who knows the weight, measure, and feeling of the very sum desired. This is why the inner law demands focus, for to scatter imagination on countless possibilities is to dilute its fire. This is how the current gathers, with every repetition of the specific sum charging the subconscious with a clear imprint. This is the unveiling of precision, showing that the imagination does not wander aimlessly but constructs realities with mathematical exactness. This is where the transformation accelerates, for as you hold the exact amount, you no longer dream in abstract but live in the tangibility of wealth. This is how the bridge of incidents prepares itself, drawing together unlikely sources to assemble the specific amount in mysterious ways. This is the deepening of faith, as you rest in the conviction that the unseen is already balanced to the figure you imagined. This is why Neville insisted on clarity, for the subconscious does not deal in maybes but in sharp, definite assumptions. This is where the shift takes place, as you stop wishing and start knowing the exact measure of your fortune. This is how destiny responds, bending events to meet the inner mold you have impressed. This is the inner command, where every feeling whispers the certainty that the money is already in hand. This is why specificity becomes liberation, because it transforms vague hope into magnetic certainty. This is the closing beat of this section, where you understand that naming the amount is not limitation, but the highest form of creative precision. Picture for a moment the difference between whispering to yourself, "I want more money," and boldly declaring within your imagination, "I have received exactly $10,000 placed into my hands." This is how it unfolds, because the mind needs a clear image to build upon, and a number is the scaffolding on which imagination weaves the scene of fulfillment. This is where the illusion breaks, for generalities keep you in an endless loop of waiting, while precision cracks open the door to tangible manifestation. This is why it matters, because by defining the amount, you create a mental contract that the subconscious accepts without argument. This is the pivot of certainty, for when you fix the figure in imagination, you step into the state of one who already possesses it. This is how the vision crystallizes, not as a dream that floats, but as a reality that weighs itself upon your senses with richness. This is where the discipline begins, as you rehearse the number until it becomes natural, until your inner conversations echo it as truth. This is how power accumulates, because every repetition engraves the specific sum deeper into the subconscious treasury. This is the unveiling of authority, where you take hold of imagination as a tool of precision, rather than a fleeting fancy. This is the turning point, for you no longer desire vaguely, but command exactly what must appear. This is where the outer world begins to shift, not by magic in the air, but by the certainty of an imaginal decree too sharp to be ignored. This is how freedom emerges, because once you have defined the amount, you rest in the knowing that it is already accounted for in the unseen. This is the revelation of clarity, teaching you that imagination obeys specifics as faithfully as mathematics obeys numbers. This is why Neville insisted on sharp inner pictures, for only then does the subconscious understand what must harden into fact. This is the fire of decision, where the number ceases to be wishful thinking and becomes the reality of your inner world. This is how the bridge of incidents aligns, gathering people, opportunities, and channels to deliver the precise amount you have assumed. This is where destiny yields, because the law of imagination cannot deny the figure once impressed with persistence and faith. This is the unfolding of mastery, where defining the amount is not about greed, but about learning the exactness of creative law. This is the concluding chord of this section, showing that clarity is the first step to authority, and authority is the first step to manifestation. Now consider this. What if money itself was never the true power, but only the echo of the consciousness you hold, a mere shadow cast by the inner light of your assumption? This is how it unfolds, because Neville Goddard revealed that wealth is not an independent force, but a reflection of the inner state, obeying the vision you dare to sustain. This is where the illusion fades, for people chase coins and notes as if they hold magic. Yet the true magic lies in the imaginal act that precedes their appearance. This is why it matters, because when you understand that money is an effect and not a cause, you stop bowing to it and begin commanding it. This is the unveiling of mastery, as you realize the world of matter is only the shadow play of your persistent assumptions. This is where the chains dissolve, because if money is only a shadow, then you already stand as the one who casts it through imagination. This is how freedom whispers, teaching that to change the outer, you must only shift the inner image that produces it. This is the turning point, because you no longer chase shadows, but step into the authority of shaping them at will. This is how the veil lifts, revealing that the numbers in your account are nothing but hardened imaginal acts you once entertained. This is where the secret deepens, for Neville taught that consciousness is the only reality, and everything else bends in obedience. This is how destiny bends, because the sun you seek is already yours in imagination, awaiting your recognition of its shadow nature. This is the heartbeat of certainty, for when you treat money as a servant of imagination, it must obey like an echo follows a voice. This is where faith strengthens, because you no longer fear lack, knowing that lack itself is only an imaginal shadow you can rewrite. This is how the current gathers, shaping the bridge of incidents in alignment with the state you occupy. This is the deeper unveiling, for the world is not outside of you but within you, mirrored in forms like money that obey consciousness. This is where the illusion dissolves and the truth emerges. You were never bound by currency, only by imagination left untamed. This is how the revolution begins, when you see that money is not a master, but a servant of your inner command. This is the crescendo of understanding, teaching that wealth is only the shadow of your inner radiance, and radiance cannot be denied. This is where the section closes with the revelation that once you master the consciousness of wealth, the shadow of money must follow faithfully. Suppose you discover that the secret to manifesting a specific sum is not in yearning for it, but in sinking so deeply into imagination that you feel as though it already rests in your possession. This is how it unfolds, because Neville insisted that desire fulfilled must be felt inwardly before it can be seen outwardly, and this feeling is the invisible magnet drawing reality to its shape. This is where the illusion dissolves, for most remain stuck in wishing, which only affirms lack, while feeling possession declares abundance as present fact. This is why it matters, because the subconscious does not respond to empty words, but to the vibration of conviction carried in feeling. This is the unveiling of the key, for Neville taught that assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled is the only bridge needed between desire and manifestation. This is how the inner current stirs, as you imagine the crispness of bills, the glow of a bank statement, or the weight of cash in your hand as though it were now. This is where the shift occurs, because your nervous system cannot distinguish between vividly felt imagination and external fact. This is how faith matures, not in waiting, but in experiencing inwardly what the senses have yet to confirm. This is the turning point, for when you feel possession, the outer world must reorganize to align with your inner certainty. This is how power circulates, with every heartbeat affirming, "It is done," until the subconscious accepts it as law. This is the unveiling of confidence, because once the feeling is natural, doubt loses its grip and circumstances bow in silence. This is where the bridge of incidents forms, drawing events in uncanny ways to fulfill the inner conviction. This is how mastery grows, because each time you practice feeling the sum as already yours, you strengthen the muscle of assumption. This is the revelation of alignment, teaching that the imagination clothed in feeling is irresistible to the laws of reality. This is where destiny bends, because money must come to the one who already lives as if it were theirs. This is how the world shifts, when the outer screen adjusts itself to match the inner movie you are rehearsing. This is the beat of transformation, as lack dissolves into certainty and certainty blooms into fact. This is the echo of Neville's wisdom, reminding us that the world responds not to hunger, but to fulfillment assumed. This is how the section concludes, with the revelation that the feeling of possession is the true gold, and once it is yours within, it cannot be withheld without. Envision a world where every silent conversation you hold is a seed, and the tone, words, and images in that inner dialogue shape the wealth that finds its way to you. This is how it unfolds, because Neville taught that your inner speech is far more potent than outer declarations, for it is the subconscious dialogue that creates. This is where the illusion fades, since most people speak of poverty within themselves, while asking for riches outwardly, unknowingly contradicting their own desire. This is why it matters, because the moment you begin rehearsing inner conversations of celebration, congratulations, and gratitude, you have set into motion a law that cannot fail. This is the unveiling of mastery, showing that money arrives not by chance, but by the conversations you dare to sustain in the silence of imagination. This is how destiny bends, for when you hear a friend saying, "I'm so glad you received the $10,000, you step into a parallel state where it is already done. This is where transformation deepens, Because the subconscious records the dialogue as if it were real and brings the outer world into alignment. This is how the inner stage becomes sacred. For every word spoken, there is creative, and every word left unchecked is destructive. This is the turning point, because once you realize you are always having inner conversations, you seize control and redirect them toward wealth and fulfillment. This is where power rises as you replace doubts with affirmations of completed victory, imagining voices that reinforce the reality of your specific amount. This is how freedom whispers, because the moment your inner dialogue aligns with abundance, outer lack loses all authority. This is the revelation of intimacy, for the voices you hear in imagination become the chorus that shapes your destiny. This is where the veil lifts, showing that the line between imagination and fact is far thinner than the world suspects. This is how certainty grows, as repeated inner dialogues settle into the subconscious, becoming the law of your being. This is why Neville urged persistence, for every repeated inner scene strengthens the bridge of incidents that carries you to fulfillment. This is the spark of realization, when you notice that your outer conversations soon begin to echo what you rehearsed in silence. This is where the miraculous happens, because the world rearranges itself to fulfill what you have already heard within. This is the heartbeat of creation, reminding you that the voices in your mind are not empty noise but creative commands. This is how the section concludes, with the revelation that inner conversations are the invisible contracts of wealth, binding reality to deliver what you have already spoken in silence. Think of the moment when you realize that the most powerful imaginal acts are not long, complicated stories, but short, vivid scenes repeated until they feel real. This is how it unfolds, because Neville taught that a single act, like receiving a check or hearing a friend congratulate you when felt vividly, is enough to call forth the sum you desire. This is where the illusion dissolves, for people believe they must hold complex rituals, yet a simple scene that implies fulfillment is infinitely more potent. This is why it matters, because simplicity cuts through resistance, giving the subconscious a clear image it can embrace without confusion. This is the unveiling of precision, where you craft a scene that captures the essence of having the money, not the process of getting it. This is how mastery begins, as you take one image, the bank app showing your balance, or a loved one smiling as you celebrate, and loop it until it breathes with life. This is where transformation takes root, because the subconscious responds not to effort, but to clarity and repetition. This is how faith is nourished, when the short scene begins to feel more natural than the old story of lack. This is the turning point, for once the scene feels real, the outer world must bow to the authority of the imaginal fact. This is where the veil thins, and you begin to sense the money is already yours because you have lived it repeatedly in your inner world. This is how power circulates, as each replay engraves the assumption deeper into your subconscious. This is the revelation of ease, because you no longer strain for results, but rest in the naturalness of a scene you have already rehearsed. This is where the bridge of incidents forms, quietly assembling circumstances that bring the sum into your hands. This is how the current strengthens, because the repeated scene creates a gravitational pull that draws events into alignment. This is the unveiling of truth, showing that the law does not demand complexity, but only focused persistence. This is where the confidence grows, as you no longer feel the need to wonder how, knowing the scene has already sealed the outcome. This is how destiny obeys, bending to the assumption that you already possess what you imagined. This is the sound of completion, for once the scene is alive in imagination, it is only a matter of time before it hardens into fact. This is the final beat of this section, reminding you that the simplest imaginal act, when repeated with conviction, carries infinite power to deliver the money you seek. Ask yourself what happens when you stop waiting for the money to come and instead take your stand in the inner world as though it is already here, complete and beyond question. This is how it unfolds, because Neville taught that living in the end means assuming the state of the wish fulfilled, walking in imagination as if the desire is fact. This is where the illusion falls apart, for most live in the state of lack while praying for abundance, unknowingly reinforcing the very thing they want to escape. This is why it matters, because when you dwell in the end, you align with the only reality that counts, the reality of assumption that creates the shadow called money. This is the unveiling of freedom, as you discover that you no longer need to strain or beg, but simply abide in the naturalness of already having it. This is how mastery expands, because the moment you claim the end in imagination, life begins weaving the unseen threads to fulfill it. This is where resistance dissolves, because when you stop looking for the money and start living as though it is already yours, doubt loses its grip. This is how certainty blossoms, with every inner act affirming the truth of possession rather than the longing of desire. This is the turning point, when you understand that living in the end is not pretense, but the only true law of creation. This is where the world begins to bend, for outer appearances must eventually yield to the sustained state of inner fulfillment. This is how the bridge of incidence arises, guiding you step by step from the old story of lack to the new story of wealth. This is the revelation of identity, because to live in the end is to embody the person who already has the sun, and the world mirrors that self back to you. This is where destiny answers, because the outer must conform to the identity you have already assumed within. This is how power intensifies, for living in the end keeps your focus anchored on fulfillment rather than absence. This is the unveiling of truth, showing that what you persist in imagining will eventually harden into fact, no matter how impossible it may seem. This is where faith matures, because you no longer wobble between states but rest in the end as the only reality. This is how freedom whispers, reminding you that the end contains the means, and by living there, the bridge unfolds without your effort. This is the rhythm of transformation, as imagination carries you from desire to possession without struggle. This is the concluding chord of this section, teaching that to live in the end is to claim now what the world insists must be future, and in that claim lies the power to manifest any sum of money you choose. Envision a night where, as your body drifts into slumber, your imagination awakens fully, holding the sum you desire as if it were already yours, vibrant and alive. This is how it unfolds, because Neville taught that the state you occupy as you fall asleep impresses the subconscious most deeply, sealing the imaginal act with effortless power. This is where the illusion of waiting dissolves, for sleep becomes the sacred portal where inner assumptions are translated into outer reality. This is why it matters, because the mind in its twilight state absorbs without resistance, registering the fulfillment as absolute truth. This is the unveiling of the secret method, showing that each night you can replay the simple scene of possession, letting feeling and imagination merge as consciousness relaxes. This is how mastery deepens, for the subconscious records every sensation, every detail, and every emotion associated with having the money, preparing life to reflect it. This is where faith strengthens, because the habitual imaginal act at bedtime bypasses doubt and convinces the mind that the wish fulfilled is the present reality. This is how the bridge of incidence begins forming invisibly, as unseen currents start aligning circumstances in harmony with your nightly vision. This is the turning point, for the moment you use sleep as a creative tool, the outer world no longer feels urgent. It responds in its own perfect timing. This is how alignment manifests, because the mind unconsciously compiles evidence and opportunities to make the scene tangible. This is where the current grows, drawing resources, people, and events toward the fulfillment impressed upon your inner state. This is the revelation of ease, demonstrating that manifestation does not require effort when imagination is impressed as fact before sleep. This is how power circulates silently, as each night reinforces the assumption and tightens the law of attraction around your desire. This is where destiny yields, because the subconscious cannot distinguish between a vividly felt dream and reality. It obeys what you accept as true. This is the heartbeat of creation, where slumber becomes the stage on which imagination writes the script of wealth. This is the unveiling of trust, teaching that when you leave the how to life and immerse in feeling, results are inevitable. This is how the unseen weaves itself, quietly constructing the pathways by which your sum of money arrives. This is the crescendo of understanding, as the mind settles into the state of already having, releasing tension and aligning circumstances naturally. This is the closing chord of this section, showing that the act of falling asleep in the assumed end is one of the most powerful tools for manifesting exact sums with effortless certainty. Picture for a moment the subtle rhythm of imagination, where the repeated rehearsal of your chosen scene does not exhaust but energizes, each cycle embedding the assumption deeper into your consciousness. This is how it unfolds, because Neville emphasized that persistent yet effortless repetition convinces the subconscious that the sum you desire is already a fact. This is where the illusion of struggle falls away, for manifestation is not a battle, but a natural blossoming when the mind is steadily impressed. This is why it matters, because forcing or obsessing over results creates tension, which only reinforces the state of lack. This is the unveiling of ease, showing that repeated imaginal acts performed with calm confidence grow stronger with each iteration. This is how mastery takes root, as your mind learns the rhythm of natural assumption and begins to accept fulfillment without question. This is where transformation solidifies, for the subconscious recognizes the pattern of certainty and aligns circumstances accordingly. This is how faith expands, because repetition without strain teaches that wealth is a matter of inner consistency, not frantic pursuit. This is the turning point, when you realize that the law of imagination works best in the gentle, unwavering persistence of repeated scenes. This is where power accumulates silently, each rehearsal a deposit into the treasury of manifestation. This is how freedom reveals itself, because you no longer measure by time or outcome, but by the steady living in the end. This is the bridge of alignment, forming as every effortless repetition attracts people, opportunities, and events that fulfill the sum imagined. This is where certainty strengthens, as repetition impresses the subconscious with undeniable clarity. This is how the unseen arranges itself, making paths and solutions appear with perfect timing. This is the unveiling of trust, because you learn to depend not on action or effort, but on the persistent life of your assumption. This is where the current flows freely, as each mental replay becomes a magnetic signal to the universe. This is how destiny obeys, bending toward the repeated image you sustain with calm conviction. This is the crescendo of understanding, teaching that repetition without struggle is the key to effortless manifestation. This is the final beat of this section, reminding you that the law responds not to stress but to calm, consistent assumption, creating the reality you have imagined. Can you imagine holding a belief so unwavering that the outer world no longer matters, because the reality you assume inwardly outweighs any fleeting evidence to the contrary? This is how it unfolds, because Neville taught that faith is the bridge between imagination and manifestation, and it requires believing without seeing. This is where the illusion of doubt dissolves, for the mind clings to appearances only when faith is weak. And once faith dominates, circumstances are powerless to contradict it. This is why it matters, because outer proof is never the cause of manifestation. It is only the echo of what has already been assumed within. This is the unveiling of inner authority, showing that those who live in the end command reality regardless of what their senses report. This is how mastery deepens, as you persist in the state of already having the specific sum, letting the unseen arrange itself without question. This is where certainty grows, because each act of believing without evidence strengthens the subconscious conviction that the sum is yours. This is how the turning point arrives, when you can look at lack in the world and remain unmoved, knowing it has no authority over your inner reality. This is where the law of imagination flexes its power, bending outer events to the sustained assumption held within. This is how freedom manifests, as the need for visible confirmation disappears, and the fulfillment is felt in advance. This is the heartbeat of conviction, for the sum you imagine is already present in the unseen realm, waiting for your inner recognition. This is the bridge of alignment, forming silently as the universe prepares events to deliver what you already accept as fact. This is where doubt is exposed as illusion, powerless against the weight of living assumption. This is how destiny bends, because the persistent inner state overrides all appearances, and life responds inevitably. This is the crescendo of inner command, showing that faith beyond evidence is not blind, it is the conscious choice to occupy the end fully. This is where power solidifies, as belief becomes the magnet for the money you desire. This is how the unseen conspires, arranging circumstances, people, and opportunities without your intervention. This is the revelation of inner sovereignty, for you realize that the world must obey the state you maintain. This is the final chord of this section, teaching that once you hold faith beyond evidence, the sum you desire is drawn effortlessly into manifestation, its arrival guaranteed by the authority of your imagination. Suppose you discover that every moment of regret, every encounter of disappointment, and every whisper of "I can't" leaves an imprint on your subconscious that blocks the flow of wealth, and that you have the power to rewrite it all. This is how it unfolds, because Neville taught that revision, mentally rewriting past experiences to align with the state of fulfillment, removes resistance and clears the path for manifestation. This is where the illusion of limitation dissolves, as you realize that the past only holds power if you consent to remember it incorrectly. This is why it matters, because each negative memory or thought of lack is a barrier between you and the specific sum you desire. This is the unveiling of mastery, showing that by revising events to reflect the reality you wish to create, you transform your present circumstances effortlessly. This is how transformation begins, as you mentally replay scenes, correcting the outcome until they resonate with abundance and fulfillment. This is where freedom emerges, because when the past is reshaped, doubt and hesitation lose their grip over your imagination. This is the turning point, as you recognize that the subconscious does not distinguish between memory and imagination. It obeys whatever you impress upon it. This is how certainty grows, for each revised scene strengthens the belief that wealth is already yours. This is the bridge of alignment, as life silently restructures itself to conform to the corrected inner narrative. This is where power accumulates, because consistent revision builds a mental landscape free of resistance, ready to receive the exact sum imagined. This is how faith is fortified, since the inner world now reflects only the state of already having, leaving no room for contradiction. This is where destiny yields, as the revised images of past events clear the channels through which abundance flows. This is the heartbeat of imagination, for you now understand that your creative act is not limited to the future. It can reshape the past to serve the present. This is how the current strengthens, attracting opportunities and circumstances aligned with the perfected inner story. This is the revelation of inner command, teaching that every resistance can be dissolved simply by rewriting the inner record. This is where transformation solidifies, as wealth becomes inevitable when the mind consistently inhabits the corrected state. This is the crescendo of understanding, showing that revision is not denial, but creative mastery, turning obstacles into instruments of manifestation. This is the final chord of this section, reminding you that clearing resistance through revision unlocks the effortless arrival of the money you have already assumed. Envision a world where you release the obsession with methods, channels, and logistics, and instead rest fully in the assurance that the sum you desire will arrive without your figuring it out. This is how it unfolds. Because Neville insisted that the moment you drop the how, you give the subconscious freedom to orchestrate circumstances in ways your limited mind could never conceive. This is where the illusion of control dissolves, for the human impulse to micromanage often blocks the natural flow of manifestation. This is why it matters, because by obsessing over the method, you focus on lack instead of the fulfilled state, delaying what is already yours in imagination. This is the unveiling of trust, showing that when you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the universe constructs the bridge of incidents automatically. This is how mastery deepens, as you learn that the law works quietly behind the scenes, invisible yet utterly reliable. This is where freedom whispers, because surrendering the how relieves you of tension and opens a channel of effortless attraction. This is the turning point, when you recognize that your only job is to live in the end, leaving life to arrange the necessary steps. This is where power consolidates, for obedience to inner assumption is more potent than frantic outer effort. This is how faith strengthens, because every time you resist the urge to plan the how, you reinforce the inner conviction that your sum is already present in imagination. This is the bridge forming as circumstances, people, and events converge in ways you could never predict. This is where certainty anchors, for the subconscious thrives on assumption, not on your clever calculations. This is how destiny unfolds silently, orchestrating encounters and opportunities that deliver the specific amount you imagined. This is the revelation of ease, teaching that letting go of the how amplifies the magnetic power of your inner state. This is where transformation accelerates, because surrender allows the unseen law to work unhindered. This is the heartbeat of creation, showing that trust and imagination is the master key to effortless wealth. This is where alignment occurs, as life mirrors the inner conviction of already having. This is how currents of abundance flow unimpeded, responding only to the certainty of your assumed state. This is the crescendo of understanding, illustrating that relinquishing control over the method transforms imagination into unstoppable force. This is the final beat of this section, reminding you that once you drop the how, manifestation of your chosen sum becomes inevitable, orchestrated perfectly by the law of imagination itself. Think of the moment when life begins arranging itself in ways so subtle and unexpected that you realize there is an invisible current carrying the sum you imagined straight to you. This is how it unfolds, because Neville taught that once your imagination impresses the subconscious, a bridge of incidents forms, guiding people, opportunities, and circumstances to converge on your desire. This is where the illusion of randomness dissolves, for what appears as coincidence is actually the law working with precision to fulfill the inner assumption. This is why it matters, because each seemingly small event is a thread in the web of manifestation, connecting you to the exact sum you imagined. This is the unveiling of unseen design, showing that life itself is a mirror reflecting the state you inhabit within. This is how mastery grows, as you start recognizing patterns and synchronicities as signposts confirming your imaginal act. This is where faith intensifies, because the bridge of incidents proves that the universe responds to inner certainty rather than outer effort. This is the turning point, when you stop questioning how and begin observing the orchestrated flow of events delivering what you assumed. This is how power manifests quietly, as the unseen arranges circumstances in perfect timing and order. This is where the current of manifestation strengthens, carrying the exact amount to you through channels you may never have predicted. This is the revelation of trust, for you realize that each minor detail, each coincidence, is part of the invisible machinery of fulfillment. This is how destiny bends effortlessly, because the bridge of incidents obeys the state of your imagination, not your planning. This is where alignment consolidates, as the outer world becomes a stage that mirrors your inner certainty with perfect fidelity. This is the heartbeat of the law, demonstrating that no step is wasted when life flows in accordance with assumption. This is how freedom announces itself, as you no longer labor for outcomes, but allow events to assemble in harmony with your inner vision. This is where momentum gathers, as each small manifestation reinforces the subconscious conviction of total fulfillment. This is the crescendo of unfolding, teaching that the bridge of incidents is the universe's way of delivering what your inner world has already claimed. This is where clarity shines, showing that wealth is drawn naturally once imagination, faith, and persistence converge. This is the final chord of this section, revealing that the bridge of incidents is the unseen river through which the exact sum you desire flows effortlessly to your reality. Can you imagine mistaking hints and subtle nudges for the arrival of your desired sum, when in truth they are merely whispers of what is already forming in the unseen? This is how it unfolds, because Neville taught that signs are not the end, they are confirmations, guides pointing toward the reality you have assumed, but they are not the sum itself. This is where the illusion of impatience dissolves, for many chase signs endlessly, mistaking the shadows for the substance of manifestation. This is why it matters, because understanding the difference between signs and fulfillment preserves your focus on the end, rather than scattering attention on fragments. This is the unveiling of discernment, showing that true manifestation is felt, completed, and already present in imagination, while signs merely hint at alignment. This is how mastery deepens as you learn to observe without attachment, knowing the sun you desire is unfolding whether you see it immediately or not. This is where faith matures, because detachment from signs strengthens belief in the invisible reality that must materialize. This is the turning point, when you realize that outer confirmation is unnecessary. The felt reality of possession suffices. This is how the bridge of incidents gains momentum, for events will align naturally to fulfill the sum, independent of your interpretation of minor signs. This is where certainty anchors, because reliance on imagination rather than evidence reinforces the subconscious state of fulfillment. This is how freedom flows, as you release anxiety and anticipation, resting in the knowledge that fulfillment is inevitable. This is the heartbeat of patience, teaching that every incident, coincidence, or opportunity serves the greater orchestration of your inner state. This is how power accumulates silently, as focus on the end strengthens the magnetic pull of your assumption. This is where clarity emerges, showing that fulfillment is not a distant event, but a present state, waiting only for outer reflection. This is the revelation of alignment, as the outer world conforms inevitably to the inner reality you sustain. This is how momentum solidifies, because ignoring signs in favor of the end avoids dilution of your imaginal authority. This is where destiny bends effortlessly, orchestrating circumstances that bring the sum to you without stress or struggle. This is the crescendo of understanding, teaching that signs are merely the punctuation marks in the narrative of fulfillment, not the story itself. This is the closing chord of this section, reminding you that recognizing the difference between signs and actual manifestation preserves focus, accelerates delivery, and strengthens the certainty of the specific sum appearing in your life. Picture for a moment the transformative force of gratitude felt before the arrival of your desired sum, radiating as if the money is already in your hands, fully embraced and celebrated. This is how it unfolds, because Neville taught that feeling gratitude in advance impresses the subconscious with the fulfillment as already real, amplifying the magnetic pull of your assumption. This is where the illusion of waiting dissolves. For gratitude is not a response to outer circumstances, but a declaration of inner reality. This is why it matters, because the subconscious responds more powerfully to the emotional certainty of already having than to mere intellectual belief. This is the unveiling of inner richness, showing that by expressing gratitude within imagination, you solidify the reality of possession before it appears externally. This is how mastery grows, as each vivid feeling of appreciation reinforces the assumption, making it irresistible to the law of creation. This is where faith deepens, because gratitude generates a state of fulfillment that the subconscious cannot deny. This is the turning point, when you shift focus from longing to celebration, creating an emotional climate where manifestation naturally thrives. This is how the bridge of incidents accelerates, as circumstances align more rapidly in response to the inner vibration of appreciation. This is where certainty anchors, for the act of feeling gratitude establishes the truth of the sum you desire as already present. This is how power circulates, as the energy of appreciation becomes a magnet drawing the money directly into your reality. This is the heartbeat of abundance, teaching that what is thanked for internally manifests externally with unstoppable consistency. This is where the veil thins, revealing that gratitude is not only a feeling, but a creative act that strengthens your connection to the unseen. This is how destiny answers, because the universe responds to the vibration of fullness, not to the emptiness of desire. This is the revelation of effortless magnetism, showing that gratitude fuels the subconscious certainty that brings the exact sum to you. This is where alignment manifests, as every imaginal scene suffused with appreciation becomes a living blueprint for reality. This is the crescendo of internal power, as the act of gratitude transforms imagination into tangible delivery. This is the closing beat of this section, reminding you that cultivating gratitude in imagination is not optional, but essential, for it magnifies, solidifies, and accelerates the manifestation of the money you seek. Think of the moment when you sense the pull of neediness creeping in, the anxious whisper of, "I must have it now," and realize that desperation is the enemy of manifestation. This is how it unfolds. because Neville taught that tension and urgency create resistance, disrupting the smooth flow of imagination into reality. This is where the illusion of effort dissolves, for trying to force the money externally only reinforces lack internally. This is why it matters, because the subconscious responds to states, not to external pleading or frantic actions. This is the unveiling of composure, showing that calm assumption of the fulfilled state invites the law to act without opposition. This is how mastery solidifies, as you learn to hold your desire lightly, letting it grow like a seed without choking it with anxiety. This is where faith strengthens, because releasing need demonstrates confidence in the unseen, and confidence magnetizes the desired sum. This is the turning point, when you replace worry with the serene certainty of living in the end, knowing the money is already yours in imagination. This is how the bridge of incidents flows effortlessly, with opportunities and solutions arriving without force or strain. This is where freedom deepens, for letting go of desperation allows inner states of wealth and abundance to dominate. This is how power circulates, because the relaxed assumption is far more potent than anxious effort. This is the heartbeat of persistence, showing that consistency of state outweighs intensity of desire. This is where the veil lifts, revealing that outer delay is no measure of inner fulfillment. This is how destiny bends, for calm faith creates alignment that desperation cannot achieve. This is the revelation of subtle influence, teaching that your inner composure guides events more effectively than frantic action. This is where alignment manifests, as circumstances adapt silently to your serene conviction. This is the crescendo of understanding, showing that resisting desperation strengthens the magnetic force of imagination. This is the closing chord of this section, reminding you that true manifestation flows from a relaxed, confident, and assured inner state, free from the trap of neediness, and that this calm authority accelerates the arrival of the exact sum you desire. Envision a space within your mind where every thought, feeling, and image is drenched in the radiance of gratitude, as if the money you desire has already manifested and you are fully immersed in its presence. This is how it unfolds, because Neville taught that the dominant emotional atmosphere impresses the subconscious more than isolated imaginal acts, and a consistent atmosphere of gratitude magnetizes the fulfillment irresistibly. This is where the illusion of waiting evaporates, for when gratitude saturates your consciousness, the outer world has no choice but to reflect it. This is why it matters, because the energy of thankfulness carries the frequency of abundance, attracting circumstances, opportunities, and people in harmony with your inner state. This is the unveiling of power, showing that wealth manifests most swiftly not through effort, but through the consistent, heartfelt atmosphere you create around your desire. This is how mastery grows, as you learn to inhabit this emotional climate continuously, letting it shape every imaginal act and every thought. This is where faith solidifies, because dwelling in gratitude reinforces the reality of already having, leaving no room for doubt. This is the turning point. When you realize that gratitude is more than a feeling, it is the environment in which the law of imagination operates flawlessly. This is how the bridge of incidents aligns, with events verging naturally to mirror the rich, thankful inner state. This is where certainty anchors, for the subconscious cannot resist the repeated dominant atmosphere you maintain. This is how power flows, as each breath, each thought, and each silent reflection strengthens the magnetic pull of fulfillment. This is the heartbeat of manifestation, showing that abundance is not a goal, but the natural product of an emotional climate you sustain. This is where resistance dissolves, because gratitude neutralizes doubt, fear, and impatience that might obstruct your desire. This is how destiny yields, as life organizes itself around the consistent vibration you emit. This is the revelation of effortless attraction, demonstrating that the sum you desire is drawn irresistibly when surrounded by an aura of heartfelt thanks. This is where alignment manifests, as the outer world bends to reflect the rich, grateful inner landscape. This is the crescendo of understanding, teaching that cultivating an atmosphere of gratitude transforms imagination into a living magnetic force. This is the closing chord of this section, reminding you that the persistent, dominant state of gratitude is the unseen soil in which the money you desire takes root and grows to fruition. Envision stepping forward with absolute assurance, feeling the sum you desire as already yours, while the world around you offers no visible proof yet, and understanding that the unseen always precedes the seen. This is how it unfolds, because Neville taught that trusting the invisible is the cornerstone of manifestation, and the subconscious responds to conviction, not evidence. This is where the illusion of doubt dissolves. For those who wait for signs or confirmation remain trapped in outer appearances, while the truly creative move confidently in the invisible realm. This is why it matters, because without trust in the unseen, all imaginal acts are weakened by hesitation and uncertainty. This is the unveiling of inner authority, showing that when you surrender to the law and assume fulfillment as present, the universe must follow. This is how mastery deepens, as you learn to abide in a state where the sum is real within, regardless of temporary outer conditions. This is where faith strengthens, because each act of trusting the unseen reinforces the subconscious assumption, solidifying it into reality. This is the turning point when you realize that the invisible is not speculative, it is the operating field of all creation, and belief alone sets it into motion. This is how the bridge of incidents gains momentum, as circumstances begin aligning quietly and perfectly to fulfill your inner conviction. This is where certainty anchors, for the subconscious recognizes and obeys only the state you assume with unwavering trust. This is how freedom flows, as releasing attachment to visible proof frees imagination to create unimpeded. This is the heartbeat of persistence, showing that consistency of belief outweighs external appearances every time. This is where the veil lifts, revealing that the sum you desire is already organized in the unseen, awaiting your recognition. This is how destiny bends, as unseen forces orchestrate events in perfect alignment with your inner state. This is the revelation of effortless creation, demonstrating that trusting the invisible is the secret to receiving the exact sum you imagined. This is where alignment manifests, as life silently mirrors the certainty you hold within. This is the crescendo of understanding, teaching that visible proof is secondary, and trust in the invisible is primary. This is the closing chord of this section, reminding you that to fully manifest money, you must walk confidently in the unseen, knowing it already exists and will appear in perfect timing. Envision the moment when the sum you imagined arrives, exactly as assumed, and you receive it with the ease of one who has long since inhabited the reality of possession, feeling gratitude and fulfillment flow naturally. This is how it unfolds, because Neville taught that true manifestation is not in grasping, but in allowing, and letting go creates the final space for reality to reflect imagination. This is where the illusion of control dissolves, for trying to force the arrival only tightens resistance, while releasing ensures smooth, effortless fulfillment. This is why it matters, because the subconscious responds to inner states, not to frantic expectation, and ease completes the bridge from imagination to reality. This is the unveiling of mastery, showing that receiving is a state, not merely an event, and that letting go solidifies the law in action. This is how power manifests, as surrender allows the invisible currents to deliver the sum without obstruction. This is where faith matures, for you recognize that you have done your work in imagination and that the outer world now reflects it naturally. This is the turning point, when you shift from anticipation to acceptance, embracing what arrives with inner peace. This is how the bridge of incidents concludes, as every step, every person, and every event aligns perfectly to bring the money into your hands. This is where certainty anchors, because the subconscious has no doubt about what is already assumed and now becomes tangible. This is how freedom announces itself, as you realize that your role was to create, assume, and release, and the law did the rest. This is the heartbeat of true wealth, teaching that inner assumption, feeling, and persistence are the real sources of abundance. This is where resistance evaporates, because letting go removes tension, leaving only the state of fulfillment. This is how destiny obeys, bending effortlessly to match the inner reality you cultivated. This is the revelation of ease, showing that money is drawn naturally when the need to control is released. This is where alignment manifests fully, as the sum arrives without struggle, fulfilling exactly the vision you held in imagination. This is the crescendo of understanding, illustrating that manifestation is a process of creation, assumption, and surrender. This is the unveiling of inner sovereignty, proving that you are the author of reality, and the law of imagination delivers without fail. This is the final chord of this story, reminding you that receiving and letting go completes the cycle, making the exact sum of money not a wish, but an inevitable reflection of the world you assumed within yourself.